I wanted to welcome you all to this session on the Networked Extension Professional. I'm Michelle Kostelecki, and I'm here to introduce John Porter's going to get us started, and he has a whole team here that'll be presenting to you today.
My team. That's right. Well, welcome. I'm John Porter. I'm from WVU Extension Service in West Virginia, and I'm joined by Karen Jeanette. Everyone knows Karen, so forget about her. And Steve Hadcock from Cornell. So we're going to talk a little bit about some discussions that we had. This all started back in September. We were all at the Galaxy conference, and we sat down at the e-extension table and we're talking, and we were talking about how do we manage our network life, especially when we have a work network life and a personal network life. So we talked about how we manage that, and then we came up with the idea of perhaps sharing what we come up with, and seeing what others are doing. But before we start, actually, Karen's role here is actually a commercial. So we're going to start off with a commercial break, right? So she'll take over and do this, but just let me start off with the radio voice. Like, this session is brought to you by. That's right.
The Network Literacy Community of Practice. We think that this session may raise more questions than answers today, and I can tell by the size of the audience, some of you have some of the same questions. And so there is an e-extension community of practice that's devoted to helping people be better learners and teachers through online networks. We are looking to find the right place to have community discussions, whether that's a Facebook group or a Google Plus community. But we all tweet and do other things on social media with the NetLit hashtag, so you can always look that up, and there's usually something coming through that stream. And if you go to extension.org/network_literacy, you can click on the Ask an Expert button and just type in, I'm interested in being a part of this community or knowing more information. And we have discussions like this through webinars and various outlets. So we welcome you to join us. So with that, I'll get back to the main presentation.
And she can be the official tweeter here, right? She's got her phone ready. So to start off, let's talk theoretically. Let's find a theoretical person and tell their story. Meet John. Okay. John is an extension agent, very handsome in that picture, might add. So an extension agent writes for the local newspaper. It's a statewide newspaper. But the problem there was that the newspaper wanted him to do it just as a citizen who was a gardener, but extension wouldn't let him do that. So he had to figure out how to balance those two. Contributes to the National Master Gardener blog, contributes to other blogs, has his own blog to share writings, wvgardenguru.com. So there's another ad. Perhaps there's a radio show in the works. He's on the board of the Public Broadcasting Network in West Virginia, and had a joke discussion. It's like, what if we do a garden radio show? And they're like, excellent idea, let's do it. What if he wants to write a book? Who owns the book? Who has the rights to that? Can he write his own book? Does it have to be a university book? So those are questions that have gone through my mind, and that we've discussed. And we've had these great discussions on Google Hangout, some of which are on my phone when I'm driving 75 miles an hour down the interstate. Oh, I shouldn't tell that, right? On my way.
He was focused.
I was focused. I was just listening, like the radio. That's right. So these were questions that we've discussed and then I've thought about. So really, the question is, how do we balance personal and professional?
I think John's illustration is very pertinent and relevant. I've been at Extension over 30 years, and we've always had to wrestle to some extent with the personal versus public or work persona that we have. You go into the grocery store and somebody recognizes you as the ag agent and comes up to you and asks you a question, even though you're there to pick up milk or whatever. So now the lines are even becoming more blurry with social media. And how do we delineate or try to hold on to a personal life, yet still try to engage and be part of the social media as a professional. So we have the professional side of it, and I can speak personally that I have gone down the route of having a personal page and a public page, and I'll also tell you right now that it's very messy. That people that I know and work with in my county or in my region, they find my personal page and want to connect to me and like me on my personal page, and then, you know, my family and so on finds my professional page and wants to join me there. I'm still, to be quite honest, I'm still wrestling. Do I say no to John Q. Public? You can't join my personal page? I have not gone that route yet. I'm still wrestling with how to work this out. So the bottom line here, I think, is that do you want to think thoroughly and reflect a little bit on your own as to what you want to set up? I also heard here this week that it's difficult for some social media sites, if you are using this, to have a personal and public persona when you're trying to check or engage on that. Thankfully for me, I carry two of them. One's for work and one's for personal, so I can keep it separate that way. So again, this is kind of bringing up the fact that we're not necessarily giving you any answers here, but trying to raise some questions, and certainly are happy to have a dialogue with you and all of us kind of collectively learn and try to maybe think more deeply about some of these questions.
So once we wrestle with those questions, then how do we manage everything? There's so much social media out there, and Karen put this funnel together. You know, we have everything funneling down, and it all funnels down into us. So this is what we are online, networked with this social media. So how do we make it all connect? I know personally, I try to make things as automated as possible. So there are ways to connect different social media. So whenever I tweet, it goes directly onto my Facebook automatically if I want, and that's a Twitter setting that you can have. When I have my own web page, the blog, it's a WordPress site, and I have an RSS feed, so that goes, whenever I put anything on there, it automatically will go out to all the social networks. I don't have to go and post everything. So there are ways to automate those things. But then there are other tools as well. So whenever we manage our social media, one tool that I use a lot is called HootSuite. Anyone ever use HootSuite? Okay, so we're preaching to the choir here. But the nice thing about HootSuite is you can put all your accounts in one place. You can type in a post and select where you want it to go. And so you can manage a lot of different things at once. It's not got everything on there, but the big ones, Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that. This is a screen capture of HootSuite that I have set up for our Urban Agriculture Conference that I talked about in our earlier session with our spokes Chicken Stew. So his name is Chicken Stew. And this is his HootSuite. So I guess it's Cluck Suite for him. And there is an app for HootSuite. But I did see a comment come up that someone who's using that, it does drain their battery, so it could be a possible drain there. But looking at managing all that, I think you have to make that decision. Where are you going to be networked? And it's the decision also in real life. You know, the one thing that I talked about was, you know, what if I'm out talking to someone and we're talking about stuff that's not necessarily extension related, but they want my information, or I want to tell them about my website. Well, most of us, you know, have our business cards that are provided to us for work. So here, very, very plain Jane, John Porter, you know, extension service. Here's my phone number. Here's my email address. But now some of the companies that print up cards are selling what are called networking cards. So Vistaprint, I went online, I ordered networking cards. So this is John Porter. John Porter is a horticulturist, extension agent, and freelance garden writer at your service. This is his web page, and here's his contact information. So I can use that when I'm interacting outside of Extension World as a business card.
So now getting to thinking about how do we use social media for reflection, and I looked at this kind of intrinsically and then extrinsically too. First, starting out intrinsically, is that going back to my master's and thinking about this from an educational perspective, what is at your core, what is your educational philosophy? How do you teach people? And then thinking about that, then you can take it the next step, because all we're talking about with these tools that we're talking about, they are tools. They're ways to engage in an educational activity, potentially with our audience. So what kind of strategy are we going to develop for engaging this audience? Is it just for informational, for promotional purposes, or do we really truly want to get to the point of engagement where we're having an interaction and we're helping them learn, but we're also learning from them through using these new tools? But then we also want to think about it extrinsically as well, as what we're putting out there and using it for. And many of people will talk about this, and the one that I remember first hearing it say is that we can use social media to curate our work. Is that it's a place to, and I think of it as using, like, back in the day, we had my grandfather and great grandfather kept a diary. They would write down what they were doing during the day and be able to reflect back. That was for their own personal use. Now we have social media tools. We have blogs. We have Twitter. We have other things where we can on a daily basis or periodically tell people what we're doing. And the advantages of that is that people can find you, read what you're doing, get interested in what you're doing, and then start to interact with you. And then that enriches the dialogue between you and many other people, so you learn and they learn as well from this interaction. So using this as a way for your own self-development and charting what you're doing is very important. So in summary, what we're going to say is that, and we haven't answered any of your questions probably, but we've hopefully raised some things that you've been thinking about. Maybe, I hope, with what we have shared has made you think a little bit more about it. But clearly what we want to do is to have more of a dynamic and engagement with you and talk about this more, because it is messy, but this is just the start of the journey, and we are all in this together.
Getting answers. Yes.
Main topic, let's say, is horticulture, or in my case, personal finance. I'm not sure all my followers want to hear about this NeXC conf, or that they don't know what it is. So, and then I've seen it also with one of our projects in personal finance where people were using Facebook primarily for personal stuff and then started to send out all these savings messages, and they got some pushback from their followers. So I guess my question is, if you have a niche and you go off your niche, is that a good thing? I mean, I purposely haven't been tweeting that much from this conference because people follow me for personal finance and not to hear some of the things that are going on. But we were trying to figure out who's Marissa's followers, because she has so many and she's just tweeting up a storm.
Well, that is a good question, and it's hard to gauge exactly. You definitely you build your network. And then you definitely do have to make those decisions based on who you're networking with. If you're looking at your Twitter followers, Twitter is, are you engaging with them beyond just giving them information? They're following you for finance, but would they be interested in something else? I put my Twitter is work. I don't do a lot of personal stuff on Twitter, But I have done fun stuff from this conference. Like last night, I tweeted, we went out and had dinner at the Hawk Farm place, and I, did a picture, and I started off the evening with a picture. I did the adventurous flight of Jinn, right? So I had the picture of the Jinns lined up in front of me. So that's what I tweeted at dinner last night. So it can be and really, if we're looking at being human, that human connection, maybe it doesn't all have to be business. Maybe it can be some personal added in there just to show our humanity. That's right. Do we have time for more? Okay.
That social media side. I mean, they again, they do have strategies for doing that. Like when you see somebody in the store, how can that be translated over to the social media into a social media strategy for dealing with personal professional?
I don't know. Garden Wisdom is shaking her head, or Backyard Wisdom up back there. So I think so. I think just looking at the way that you manage those. One thing that I've just done. Because I know that I bore people to death on my personal Facebook, which is my personal, but I've been putting like my articles and stuff on there. Not everyone wants to read them, but I get a lot of comments and interaction back. Is actually I did my own page. So it's sort of like, the ultimate trip in ego is, you make yourself a page that says Garden Guru John Porter. But people that just want to follow me for that and don't necessarily want to be my friend, and I don't know them, so, but having maybe alternate means for people on the personal level, and then on the actual friend or public personal level would be good.
I think we just pointed out Maggie, who's in the back in the pink and the orange. She is at Backyard Wisdom on Twitter, and she does a fabulous job of being personal and professional. I'm always amazed. And she knows right how to interject the research-based information at the exact right time. Not when people aren't, looking for it. They'll say something about it, and she'll say, oh, well, we have this, And I think people are really receptive, and we need to think about how receptive they are, because there's enough information that's out there just hitting people in the face and bouncing off.
So I was wondering, on your networking cards, what information beyond those 3 descriptors do you have? Do you have like a QR code that they can scan and find you at one of your places, or how do you do that?
I don't have a QR code, but I have my Twitter handle, my Gmail account, so my personal email, my personal phone, my home address, and just for good measure, it looks like I put my personal email on there twice. So, it's just connecting with me on a personal level rather than calling my office and waiting to get through my voicemail and all that. If I am making those personal connections, I would use something like this, a calling card.